When you're starting a company from a mission and it has a story, it's the way you grow a brand because you allow consumers to really understand what you're talking about. And when you're launching a product and you don't actually have a story, you don't actually have a mission, maybe it can be done. It's going to be a lot more expensive. And you're basically a commodity against another product.
Hi, I'm Jason Harris, and you're listening to Soul and Science. Fast forward your marketing mind in about 20 minutes. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I am joined by Kara Goldin, the founder of Hint, best known for its award-winning Hint water, the leading unsweetened flavored water. She's been named one of InStyle's Badass 50, Fast Company's most creative people in business, Fortune's most powerful women entrepreneurs, Fortune's most innovative women in food and drink, and EY Entrepreneur of the Year for Northern California. Quite a list of accolades. The Huffington Post listed her as one of 6 disruptors in business alongside Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. She's an active speaker and writer and hosts the podcast, The Kara Goldin Show, where she interviews founders, entrepreneurs, and other disruptors across various industries. Her first book, Undaunted, was published by Harper Leadership in October 2020 and is now a Wall Street Journal and Amazon bestseller. All right. She lives in the Bay Area, and we connected because I also had a book that launched, and it was right before yours, and yours was outstanding. I loved the book, and we are excited to talk about the book and many other things on the podcast today. And you can follow Kara on all social channels at Kara Goldin. Thanks for joining us. We're excited to chat with you.
I'm super excited to be here, and your book was terrific.
Oh, thank you. All right, let's dive right in. We love an origin story, and you built this company from your kitchen in your garage. Can you give us the origin story of the start of Hint?
Yeah, so basically I was a tech executive. I was at America Online and was building out their direct-to-consumer business and had been there for 7 years when I decided I wanted to take a break. And I had young kids. I had 2 young kids and a third one on the way. And I was living in San Francisco. I was noticing that the United Airlines pilots all knew my name when I got on the flight. That's how often I was traveling. And I thought, I just really want to spend this time in San Francisco with my husband and with my young kids. And maybe I'll look for a job. I don't know how long I'm going to take off. But I ended up taking off a couple of years. And during that time, I really found that my focus was on trying to get my kids healthy and keep them healthy and telling them don't have so much sugar. I was questioning whether or not we should put apple juice give them apple juice because they were bouncing off the walls every time they had their sippy cup filled with apple juice. And so it was at that moment that I looked down at my diet soda, Diet Coke in particular, that I saw all these ingredients that I didn't understand. And I felt like I was a hypocrite. And so I decided to stop drinking diet soda and basically start drinking water. And I went cold turkey for 2.5 weeks. I was shocked when I lost 24 pounds in 2.5 weeks just by giving up the Diet Coke. And that was, the moment when I started to get really intrigued and really curious and interested. And I did everything from call Coca-Cola and talk to the customer service line. Like, why did this happen to me? I'd been drinking Diet Coke since I was in high school. And, I definitely gained weight over the course of all my pregnancies and had sort of written it off as you get older, you gain weight and, and hormones and all the stuff. And so it was at this moment when I thought, okay, there's just one problem. Of course, I'm not going back to drinking diet soda, but water for me is so darn boring. And so I started slicing up fruit and putting it in the water. And then, I'd buy these lots of fruit and I put them in pitchers. And what I found was it would only last for a couple days. And I thought, there has to be this product on the shelf somewhere. And I was living in San Francisco. I looked in every store I could find and no drinks. And the drink that I was really trying to find was an unsweetened flavored water. And so everything had sweeteners in it. And one day I went back to my Whole Foods in San Francisco where I was shopping and asked the guy in the beverage aisle, I said, "Hey, how do I get a product on the shelf?" And he said, "What do you mean? Like, you want to be a part of our local suppliers program?" And I'm like, "Sure." And he said, "Oh, well, here's who you email." And I said, "So what's the deal with the local suppliers program?" And they said, "Well, we try and put 10% of the products that are on the shelf from local companies." And I'm thinking, I make my product in my kitchen. That's like local. I mean, that's good. And so I, figured out that after, 6 months, I really had to get it on the shelf because I found out I was pregnant shortly after the business plan was written with my fourth. And so I wanted to have some kind of maternity leave. So I was like, I got to get it on the shelf. So I had a goal. I had a, timeline set for myself that I was going to meet. And so that was sort of, I was off to the races. But like any time you start a company, especially a company that is a physical product, there's always delays that you didn't anticipate. And so my product was supposed to show up like, I think 3 weeks prior to me having a planned C-section. And it didn't show up. It showed up the day before I was having a planned C-section. And so the morning I woke up on May 27th, 2005, I didn't have to be at the hospital till 2 o'clock. And I said to my husband, he said, "What do you want to do this morning? You want to go to brunch? You want to go on a walk?" I'm like, "No, let's go to Whole Foods and see if we can get the product on the shelf." So when I went to Whole Foods and my husband came with me and had 10 cases on a dolly and wheeled them in. And that's when the guy who had told me about the local program, I said, "Hi, do you remember me?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, you are super pregnant." And I said, I am super pregnant. And he said, are you going to have a baby in the store right now?" And I'm like, "I hope not. I mean, I'm having a planned C-section this afternoon." And he probably felt a little sorry for me, thought, here's this person who's having a baby and then she's coming in like doing her job, still selling the cases. And so he put them on the shelf. And so it was that was the story. And then the next day he called me in the hospital and said, "Well, I just wanted to tell you the cases are gone." And I said, "Who took them?" Because again, like I just wanted to get the product on the shelf. I hadn't thought about somebody buying the product that quickly. And so, then we had to replenish the product. So that's when my husband went and did that while I was relaxing a little bit. But yeah, that was the story of Hint, the beginning days.
I love that story because there's so much family behind it. Your
Mhm.
kid's really motivating you to make the product, and then your fourth kid motivating you to make sure the product was placed. And then your husband helping all along the way to make sure, support you in however he could. So that's a family story of Hint. I love that. So switching gears, your husband is Theo. He also started at the beginning with you and worked alongside you. I mean, you guys must have been around the clock talking about Hint. What was that like? I always wonder what it would be like to work with a spouse. What was that like?
One of the stories that we have where Theo played I mean, there's multiple stories, but Theo played a major role is about a year into uh, launching Hint. I couldn't figure out how to get this product to where we needed it to be from a shelf life perspective. And we almost shut the company down. I mean, I was like, we I didn't want preservatives in the product. And so I reached out to every person who would talk to me in beverages and food to try and figure out how we could create a product that didn't have preservatives in it. And, most of the bottlers that we talked to said, it just can't. And I'd say, why? And I think in tech, I was always used to, uh, asking questions, right? And there was no roadmap, and all the things that I had done before Hint, I felt like, we were paving new ground. But now I walked into an industry that thought they had it all figured out, yet I was coming up with things that nobody had figured out. And the short answer for all of these things was no. And that just never was really acceptable to me. So I think like that's when he put his thinking cap on and really started to, play with actual production. And ultimately what we ended up doing at Hint is creating the first product that was using real fruit that didn't have preservatives in it, I mean, for the industry. And prior, I was just telling a new entrepreneur this story the other day. I mean, prior to Hint, no one was doing that in the water category. There were people who were doing it in the juice category, but nobody was doing it in the water category. And juice lines and water lines are sort of different in a production facility.
You're $250 million business now. Was there a turning point? You talked about the preservatives as maybe an inflection point of, can we go on because of, we have to have shelf life and we've got to place these orders, and we need to mass produce it. Was there a turning point when you realized this thing was going to catch and it was going to go? And do you remember when that was?
There were so many sort of kind of mini mountains, right? That we knew that they were coming. And, it's interesting. We grew over the last 17 years, but every year we grew. We never had a down year from the previous year, but we knew that we needed to wait for the consumer to catch up to where I was, that there was a lot of education, and there were things along the way that I talk about in my book, for example, where I used to think that the minute, Coca-Cola comes along and launches a knockoff product, we're dead, right? We're like, I mean, I had potential investors saying to me that that's why they weren't going to invest in what I was doing, because they're like, it's a good idea, it's a great product, but the minute that, the big guys catch on to this, they have distribution, they know how to do this product, they have a lot more money, they can market it, like, you're dead. And so I believed that. And I didn't really fully, kind of understand the counter argument to that, which is, that competition actually can help you and probably will help you in the end. And when we got a phone call one day from one of our major retailers that we were in, and they were removing us from the shelf. And basically, they told us that Coke had launched a knockoff product, Dasani Essence Water, and that they were this thing called category captains. If you know what that is, it's basically owning a chunk of real estate in the beverage aisle. So they wanted to basically own this category, and part of the agreement was that Hint was out. And I'm like, how can you do that? I mean, that's crazy. Like, we were here first, we were doing well, and now these guys are coming along and taking our space. So I didn't have that much to say, and, hung up the phone, and we were out of that major retailer. And it was a bummer. And I thought, I mean, I got to focus on these other retailers to try and make up for the loss, all that stuff. And then a couple of months later, it was about 6 months later, we got a phone call from that retailer, and the retailer said, "Hey, do you want to come back in?" And I said, "Of course I do. I mean, so what happened?" And they said, "Well, it was interesting. We thought that the sales were pretty good, but Coke didn't. That they didn't want to continue because they basically saw that there were other products that they do that were, doing more sales per square foot, and so they wanted to put some of their other products into that space. But we actually wanted to keep recognizing the category that you had created, which is unsweetened flavored water." And so we went back into the store, and not only went back in, but that 6 months where we were out of the store, Coke had actually negotiated more space. And so we got more space. We doubled our space.
Amazing.
in 6 months.
I
I
love
mean,
that
so
story.
counter
Right.
to what I thought was going to happen. And, the thing that I tell people about competition is it's disruptive. You get kicked out of a store that you're counting on being in. I mean, all these things, they're a bummer, all this. The key thing is that you have to have enough options around you that you can go and, triage and make up for that revenue. But you focus on what you can control. And I couldn't control that conversation. Like they were going to do whatever they were going to do. What I could control was continuing to make a great product and having them see that I wasn't going out of business. And finally, I think you're going to have hiccups along the way. You're going to have challenges along the way, and your ability to be able to weather storms. I mean, that could have been a big hit for us if I didn't have any other options out there, if I didn't have enough money in the bank or whatever. But I think that those, it's not the end of the world. In fact, I think that it actually helped consumers to understand that we were a better product. We were,
I love that story of focus on what you can control, keep going on. And the idea that competition can be good, I think is a great learning. When we think about soul and science, we think about the heart and the head. We think about obviously the soul, the brand. You had a purpose from the beginning, which is super clear because a lot of brands make a product, then they invent a reason for being, or they have to do it through marketing in order to sell and create a connection with the audience. You clearly had a purpose right from the start. And then you had this, then you have to figure out, all right, we're selling in store. We're going to create this big D2C business. We're going to sell on Amazon. Then we're going to be in every store. How, as a founder, how do you think about gut instinct versus analytical decision making when you're plotting your path? How do you weigh those two things together?
One way that we have used analytics is actually to go into these buyers and say that, this brand, they might be your category captain, but they're getting too much space. That when you look at sort of the, sales per square foot that a hint product is doing versus some of these other brands that are getting a lot more space, maybe a buyer hasn't sort of questioned it before. And we've taken that analytics to be able to do that. But I think that when you're starting a company from a mission and it has a story, you and I were talking about this before, I think that it's the way that you allow consumers, it's the way you grow a brand because you allow consumers to really understand what you're talking about. And when you're launching a product and you don't actually have a story, you don't actually have a mission, maybe it can be done. It's going to be a lot more expensive and you're going to put advertising in all these things, but you're basically a commodity against another product.
Right. How much do you think, because I agree, the mission's clear, the name's obvious and excellent. There's a lot you can do with a name. It's memorable, it's simple, and you have really simple packaging. Do you think that the brand identity and the name and the packaging helped the velocity of sales?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to simplicity in packaging too, and there definitely is a feel. This bottle actually that I'm holding and you're holding. I mean, we have two trademarks on that bottle. We actually created the design and the bottle, and there's a feel to it that is important. There's actually when we created, there's some that have sort of knocked this off, but the closure at the top, the opening and the amount of space in the opening too. There's, you're going to drink more water when it's a larger opening. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it. But I think it goes back to my comment about Steve Jobs. I mean, I had no idea how that machine worked. And it didn't matter, right? The consumer shouldn't have to figure out things like, does this product have preservatives in it or not? Or, why is there a liner in this bottle or not a liner in this bottle? Those are all things that, you think about internally and they're important in order to have a great product out there that people are going to love. But I definitely think, the labels and things like that are, uh, I wanted to create a product that made me happy, but was also really interesting and simple. And I think that's it's hard. It's hard to be simple, right? And I think that, one thing I share with entrepreneurs over and over again is you almost have to have two different languages going on inside of your company when you're trying to get stuff done. You have to sort of have your outer facing messaging where, you know, it's drink water, not sugar. It's, unsweetened flavored water. It's fruit
Zero
and
calories,
water.
zero sweeteners. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have that going, and those are and that's really important. But then inside the company, to create a really simple product is actually really hard. And I know you guys do a lot. It's the same with campaigns.
Yeah. The
You
power of editing is the strongest of all because
totally.
you can't throw too many messages at the audience. You have to keep it simple and clean. They have to have a clear takeaway. And naming is really important. Naming and name recognition really matters. This has been fantastic talking about Hint. I want to talk about Kara Goldin a little bit. Do you have a role model in your personal or your professional life that you always think about?
It's interesting. I think I learned a lot from my dad. Just my dad had founded a brand inside of a large company. The brand's called Healthy Choice. It's still alive and well today. And he was at Armor Food Company and then at ConAgra. And, so I learned a lot of, frankly, the frustrations of launching a brand inside of a large company. And, it's still a brand that is amazing today. But so I learned a lot from him, obviously. But the other person that I think I never gave enough credit to while she was alive was my mom. I mean, she had decided when I was in kindergarten that she was an art history major, and she had decided that she was going to go into fashion. And imagine, like, I'm the last of five kids. My mom comes home one day and says to my dad, I'm going back to work and I'm going to go into fashion. She's like 45 years old. And my dad's like, okay. Like, I mean, doing what you love every single day, as I say to my four Gen Zers, is like, it's a gift. The trick is to actually find that thing that you want to wake up and do every day that satisfies your curiosity versus actually just going to do something that, you've been doing for a long time and it's the only thing you know how to do. It's like, you have to find the courage to kind of actually figure out what you like and then also find what you like.
Hats off to your mom and dad. Do you have a last question? Do you have a favorite? Obviously, the word Undaunted, both in how you've built Hint and through your career and a lot of what we learned in the book. But do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you live by or that guides you?
I have a lot of them, but I would say, don't worry. Don't worry about the end so much that I think instead worry about the process, right? Like getting through, because I think that that's the key thing is that sometimes I think we worry so much, like something is so hard and so massive. Starting a company, right? I think if I sat there and focused on starting a company or taking on the soda companies or Big Sugar or whatever, I probably wouldn't have started. Like if I would have known what I know, and sometimes I think instead you just kind of get through the smaller things, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, like got through a lot here, and now I'm off to the races. And so that would probably be the biggest one. Just go and try.
It's that first step that you have to take, but people are always thinking about the end of the journey and not that process. Well, I think this has been amazing. I just wrote down a lot of what I learned from you, but I think I love this sort of notion of family success, both in building the business with your family, but also lessons from your mom and dad. Simplify is a very important one. Focus on what you can control, and competition can be a good thing. And then for people to find that thing that they want to be doing and then go do it and focus on process, not the end result. And that is amazing. And obviously it's done you and served you really well, Undaunted, and founded an incredibly great product, incredibly successful company that challenged an entire industry. So thanks for being on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, Tyler Nielsen, Emma Swanson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.